Nation, thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot to me. I wanted to make a quick video, not go too long, maybe 10 minutes. It's an opinion piece. I'm going to write an article. I am actually in the middle of writing an article for my LinkedIn, my investigators brochure. I'm still very proud of that name. LinkedIn newsletter. So make sure underneath, just click my LinkedIn and subscribe to my newsletter on there, please. And also make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Ad free. I'm trying to get to 100,000. Look, there's something that's been plaguing our industry since I can remember. Like, I started in 2005, and mainly it's around like we are all business to business companies, right? We don't really we do treat patients or we serve patients because research is not treatment, despite some people saying it is. It's not. We serve patients as sites. They don't pay us like in a traditional B2C business, business to consumer. We don't actually monetize directly from our patients. We collect data, we monetize from the pharmaceutical sponsor. So we're all B2B. Every single stakeholder in this industry, other than the patients, are business to business businesses. There is something to be said about an industry that is hard to get into, relatively high barriers of entry, mainly because of the competency. There's not really so much like to start a site, you can do it relatively cheaply, but a lot of people either they don't know about clinical research to start a business or they're intimidated because it seems like it's a lot of regulations. And there are, but those regulations, like only a handful of those regulations actually apply to any particular stakeholder. So at a time, collectively, there's a lot, but each stakeholder is really concerned with a handful. There is an incentive, ever since I remember, and it hasn't really gone away. There's an incentive in this industry to not really make progress. I wrote another article, semi-controversial, called Prisoner's Dilemma, where the CROs kind of, in a way, kind of were cooperating as far as not releasing progress quickly, and then in order to benefit on the higher margins and the more predictable business cycles. And then somewhere in the mid-teens, 2015, they started deviating because there was a lot of mergers and acquisitions amongst the CROs. And then technology became a huge force to where they're competing, right? But still, they're still competing, but they're not competing for the metrics that matter, which to a sponsor, the only metric that matters is will my trial finish on time and under budget? And objectively, you can look at any of the Tufts. They're like the industry leader in studying this kind of stuff. Statistics. If somebody put a link in the comments, a vast majority, maybe 90% of trials, if not higher, are way over budget and way delayed as far as study startup and as far as like actual enrollment and accrual times. And I don't think there's actually a solution to this. I think it's a complicated business. The only way you get a real solution is to encourage more companies to be involved in the space. So CROs don't really care, nor do they get paid differently based on how quickly they complete a study. I mean, they might get some bonuses and things like that. For sure, the sponsors have figured out ways to do incentives, but it hasn't worked. And it hasn't worked because for that to happen, they would have to radically transform how they run a trial to the point where it will impact their bottom lines, the CROs in this case. So CROs don't actually care too much about studies being over budget and over the timeline. They're publicly traded companies. To them, that's stable, steady revenue. And the sponsors kind of have no choice other than, which is going to be interesting now, paradigm shift happening where site networks are starting to consolidate, and it's going to be interesting to see going forward. The site networks are in a way going to compete with the CROs for at least some of the CRO's core competencies. Let's see how that plays out. I do think technology is a deflationary force and a definite driver for client outcomes. And in this case, the clients are the pharmaceutical companies. This is like the easy problem to see. Like CROs don't really care if studies are over budget. Well, they're the ones getting paid most of that when it goes over budget or over the timelines. Sites, look, I'm a site owner. We try to do our part because we want to look good to the pharma when they pick us to do a study. If I tell them I'm going to randomize 10 patients, I'm going to want to randomize 10 patients. I know they're going to hold me to that. And if I randomize 8, it's okay. If I randomize 12, it's really good. If I only put 1 or 0, it's not good. But I know that I'm graded not just on what I said, but in context to what my peers are doing. So if they are also taking the same amount of time to accrue whatever they promised, and everyone else is kind of on the same page, and it's not like sites are colluding, but sites just they have a lot of options. They have a bunch of studies to recruit for, and no matter how often like the sponsor says, yeah, this is competitive enrollment, at some point it does become competitive because when the studies get near the closing line as far as enrollment, sites really drop what they're doing and start prioritizing those studies. But sites don't really care either, like if studies are over budget or not on time. Matter of fact, like dare I say, it's better for us if we have longer. If we thought we had only 12 months to enroll on a study, and sponsor says no due to unforeseen complications with the protocol, and a lot of times it's not the site's fault. We can't turn water into wine. We can't make miracles happen when protocols are tough. But we're like, if we get word, we being sites, that a study is going from 12 months to 16 months now of enrollment, we actually breathe a sigh of relief. And that's understandable. But now this very same model applies to everything else in the space. And this is where I take issue. There's this sort of a fake altruism that I've noticed, especially around minority participation. Everybody recognizes it's a problem. Everybody recognizes, hey, we need more minorities to enroll in studies. This is the thesis for why I open a site in Yuma, Arizona, a border town basically in the middle of nowhere, relatively speaking. There's a huge Hispanic population here, and I think that's been part of the success. But there's not enough of that happening to move the needle. Instead, what you have are a bunch of organizations, nonprofits, with their hands out, talking really good about what the problems are, releasing white papers about the problem, explaining the problem, why it's important to have inclusivity in studies. And millions are funneled into these kind of initiatives, and nothing gets done. My colleague Judy Galindo, when we need a Spanish informed consent form, it takes months to get one. And so it makes you wonder all these organizations that are in the battle for driving improvements, are they really, or are they just milking the problem further? And it's something that's been bothering me. I don't know if I have my finger on the pulse, like exactly or precise. And this is not to say that every organization that tries to solve these problems is that way. I'm a co-founder of Latinos in Clinical Research. We started it in 2020. We actually have not made any money. We've received some donations. We've had a few projects with sponsors that have been relatively well received by the sponsors. But like as far as government grants, as far as like getting NIH funding, we haven't. And I feel like there's like this labyrinth of organizations all fighting for that money. Like whenever something becomes a hot topic like diversity was for the last few years, and now it's going to be AI for the next 5 years. And before that, it was decentralized clinical trials. And before that, it was virtual clinical trials. It's hard not to think there's a lot of grifting going on. Grift, meaning people come up with these schemes to try to get money without really trying to actually solve the problems. And I think that's an issue. And I think it kind of ties into the new administration's observations as far as not just our space. I mean, what's happening with the NIH is kind of a different issue. I'm going to write an article on that too. I have opinions on that as well. But just the overall zeitgeist of our industry has always been a lot of problems, a lot of money to figure out solutions, but then no one ever really figures it out. It just kind of not even like incremental improvements. I mean, hopefully there are. I think when there's small businesses opening up and they're depending on the profits they make from actually solving problems, you do get incremental improvements, like back to capitalism. For the most part, it's just figuring, like understanding what the industry's biggest issues are and then figuring out clever ways to attempt to solve the problem, but nothing actually gets done. I mean, look at all the money that was spent on diversity, increasing minority participation in clinical trials. There's been great organizations that popped up. I know several of them, like not everyone's a grifter. If you track dollar for dollar where the funding has gone, it's not gone to the efficient ones like it's supposed to. And I think that speaks to a little bit of the incestuousness of our industry. And it's something that has been bothering me for a while. I don't know if I'm 100% accurate, but I know there's some substance to this because I'm not blind or dumb. And you can't tell me I haven't seen what I've seen and heard what I've heard in these 20 years. I want to know what your thoughts are on this and how the industry should solve this problem, or is incremental change, little by little, the only way to solve these issues? I mean, maybe that's the case. But when we have moonshot initiatives, they usually fall flat and they're also expensive. And at the end of the day, we're all paying for that as taxpayers, but on a global scale as human beings and as patients, because we're all patients at the end of the day. Let me know your thoughts on this. Like, subscribe, comment, share. I hope I didn't piss too many people off, but it's important to talk about. Bye bye.